Hello Internet and welcome to the GameEngineStart 2021 Game of the Year Fireside Chat, I think. Or
Freeform discussion,
general
jam
chinwag.
session.
Jam session, I like that. We'll go with that.
Jam session.
Yeah, we're not doing a traditional Game of the Year this year for multiple reasons. One that
Because this year's been fucked. That's why.
But that's one reason. The other reason
Yeah.
was we were planning to do this in person, and then the world decided to go fuck you once again, and we said maybe not. I'd bought a new camera and everything, was ready to go, and was like, nope.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh
Yeah.
no.
Well, I mean, like it'll be useful anyway, but you know, because we really need to see both of us in 1080p 60 really nicely.
Yeah.
In high quality. Cameras have got really. That's a different conversation. But yeah,
Did you get into the world of DSLRs? Was that
No. I considered it for a little bit. I was like, we don't need that. No, I just got like the best. You know that thing that like when like internet ads are so predacious that like when you look at something on one site, it will suggest the same thing to you at every other website you go to forever.
Yeah.
Once you start reading a couple of articles, like what are the best like high quality webcams of 2021, and it's just like, congratulations on seeing webcams for the next 2 months as you go across the internet. It's the worst. But yeah, I just bought a really high quality webcam that will do everything we need it to do, and we can't use it because we're not in person. And yeah, also like the slate of games, like, so we generally keep a list of stuff that happens during the year and potential categories and ordering stuff, and we just looked at it and went like, there's not enough categories or games to really warrant a usual discussion.
Because we do this like in our own time, out of our own pocket, and we're not like journalists who get given stuff for free.
Yeah.
The bigger, higher profile stuff that came out this year was so like middle of the road apparently that it never really grabbed us enough to pick it up and play it. So a lot of the stuff that is like smaller stuff, or like there wasn't enough to flush out a full discussion. Yeah. So we're not doing the normal like breakdown of categories thing anymore. So well, at least not this year. We'll see how 2022 goes. But like, well,
this year,
obviously, I'm not saying that this is going to be consistent.
Yeah, no. But like, we just looked
how this year shook out.
We just looked at it and went, actually, there's just not enough really that's worth interesting discussion. So we're just kind of going to go through some of the stuff that we played, our own top fives, and just some general high and low moments, I think, over the year.
Yeah.
So we should probably start with how we do normally start these discussions, with stuff that didn't come out this year that was good, or that we came into this year that is worth talking about.
The stuff that we didn't manage to pick up and then got later.
Yeah. So like, I remember back at the start of the year on the podcast, I talked a little bit about Immortals, which was a 2020 game, which again, get ready for a lot of feelings of right, that did come out this year. And Immortals Phoenix Rising, I maintain, was still like exactly the game I needed it to be at that time. Like, it's not.
This is the Greek mythology. Yes. Breath of the Wild game, right? That's the.
I picked that up in December, I think, after we did Game of the Year last year, and it kept me going through January this year. And then the China DLC, or the Chinese inspired DLC that they put out middle of the year, was also more of that. Like, it's just a generally good like kill time game, and I really liked it. And I know it got a lot of shit when it came out, but it was one of those games that, like, actually this is totally fine and totally exactly the thing I need, and is higher quality than I expected it to be. So it's worth picking up on a sale if you need some. If you're looking for one of those games, it's a very good.
I saw it on sale in a shop recently for like 15 quid, and I thought about picking it up. But
that is a bargain for that. And again, it's like, I mean, like, I'm kind of done with Ubisoft games, but like both as a
Ubisoft in general,
as a company and as a genre. Like, it's like, especially looking at Far Cry 6, where you started to see even the press at this point are like, they need to fucking do something else, because like, I cannot take over another outpost. Like, I'm kind of done. And it kind of has bits of that, but
it's part of the reason that like their games this year just weren't very interesting, is because they started like homogenizing a bunch of stuff where it was like all hey, go take over this outpost or
Totally.
go stand in this thing, and you're like, yeah. The only thing that I think was Riders Republic, was that a Ubisoft game this year?
Yeah. Did that come out?
Okay,
or is that just the beta?
I actually don't know.
I think that came out. I know there was the beta.
I think that came out this year, right? Yeah, it came out in October, right?
Oh yeah, October. Okay.
Yeah. That potentially I don't think has any of the Ubi stuff in it, but
yeah. But yeah, so Immortals.
That's maybe one of the games we should have checked out, because apparently that's actually quite good.
Yeah, I keep seeing clips of it, and I'm like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think it just, I think it just makes me sad for SSX, to be honest.
It's not SSX.
Yeah, kind of. And then a couple other things I came back to that, like, I started playing Cyberpunk again over Christmas, because I was like, part of me like just intellectually like, okay, what is this game like? Because I played it at launch and finished it, and like I enjoyed it at the time. It was like, okay, what does that game look like after the 100 patches that it got? I was like, it's totally playable. Like somebody asked me over Christmas, actually, it was like, hey, Cyberpunk's on sale, should I pick this up? I was like, yeah, probably. Like, it was 20 quid or whatever it was over Christmas. I was like, that is a solid 40 hours of content for 20 quid, and it works. Or, okay, to be clear, it worked when I started playing through it again, and worked better than it did last time. I still like that game, despite intellectually knowing a lot of that stuff, a lot of the stuff,
all the stuff behind
behind it. But like, I do still like that game. I really like what it does. It just looks fucking incredible. Yeah, but yeah, I will go back and finish that.
It's okay to say that you like Cyberpunk as a genre. That's fine.
Yeah, I know, and it's
okay.
Yeah, Cyberpunk is a good 80s Cyberpunk game. I feel like I should clarify that. The one thing actually that
it's a very traditional Cyberpunk game.
Yeah,
but it is a Cyberpunk game rooted in a very old Cyberpunk thing.
Yeah.
So.
And then Satisfactory again is just like my consistent.
That's
like,
never going to be off this list. It's always going to be on this list.
Yeah, but also like
I could put fucking Destiny 2 on this list and keep going.
I fully expected you to be honest.
There's not really any point.
But like I'm not like, I talk about Satisfaction in the podcast enough, but like that game continues to evolve, and it's mainly on this list because
the added trains,
and also a mate of mine came on and was like, hey, I picked up Satisfactory after hearing you talk about it on the podcast, and you weren't fucking joking. I was like, yep.
Yeah.
And every time I log on to Steam, it's like, oh,
they're playing Satisfactory.
20 hours in Satisfactory, huh? How's your factory doing? It's like, oh yeah, I need to rework my own production. It's like, good, yes, you're there. Okay, excellent.
Don't want to talk about conveyor belts anymore.
No. So the one I will say, because I didn't talk about the podcast because it was quite recent, but one of the things I did over Christmas was I finished. Well, no, I picked it up over Christmas and played through it. It's a game called Broken Reality, which is a game from 2018, I want to say. I think. And I really liked that thing, and I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, because there was a couple of things. One is just like it's a kind of narrative exploration. It's kind of a walking simulator, kind of, but also like it's a puzzle solving platformer, kind of, as well, done in first person. But it's set in like a fake like online chat space. So God, what would be the equivalent? It's so the conclusion that I came to through all of this is like, this is what Roblox should have been. Like, it's a complete fucking stylistic mess, and it reminds me a lot, not in a good way, but like reminds me a lot of like the internet that I grew up on back in the day, when it was like GeoCities pages and like Cybertown VRML chat rooms and like all of this kind of stuff. It was like, it's a complete, like, nothing's consistent. Everything's like got its own little kind of fiefdom that it kind of handles itself, and just like everyone's just making shit, and like nobody really knows what's happening, but everyone's just making stuff, and it all looks great or terrible or both. And it was really weirdly affecting. Like it like a lot of games have tried to do this kind of like, hey, do you remember the 90s like internet stuff, like hyperspace? No, hyper. The hell was that name? The name of that game? The
Hypnospace Outlaw.
Thank you. That one. That was going for a very specific thing. That was going very much for the kind of like, here's
early
actually
days
what
of AOL.
kind of, but like here's what the internet actually looked like. Broken Reality is going for something that's more like, here's what the internet could have been if that train had continued, and like.
This looks fucking weird as shit.
Yeah, it's so cool. Like, it's got incredible music. It's actually got some really cool, like, it's got a lot of, some of it is platforming, some of it's kind of puzzle solving, a lot of it is kind of like experiential stuff, but it's like, it feels like that, like, again, I left that thing going like, man, if Web 2 hadn't happened, like, imagine what something like Roblox could have looked like, where it was just like, it's what Roblox should look like, and it kind of does, except that.
I mean, that's implying that like technology doesn't move forward and everything just looks like fucking vaporwave.
No,
all
because
the time. Like,
no, but you would still need the. But again, you look at Roblox and it does look a lot like the stuff that's here, right? It's what happens when, like, people talk about like the democratization of creation, right? And like, Roblox is the purest form of that, whereas like when literally anyone, including like 7-year-olds, can make shit, like this is what it looks like, and it looks terrible and great, and like people just do stuff like that.
Yeah, fair.
The problem with Roblox is that it's a capitalist nightmare inside it, but like but so and again they do touch on some of that, right, where you're like, where the like one of the areas in that game literally called the GeoCity, which was pretty good, is like this like vaporwave cyberpunk city, but it looks like trash and it's great. And you know when people talk about remasters of games and they're like, it now looks like what it looked like in my head at the time.
Yeah.
Like that's what Broken Reality is to me. Broken Reality was like what Cybertown, which was the VMLR 3D thing that I used to play.
What the internet thought the internet looked
what
like
I thought
when
the internet
like
was going to be,
or whatever.
Yes, exactly. Like, and it's really well made, and they've really nailed something in there. Like, Broken Reality is a super good like 3-4 hour John.
It's something, just looking at it, it's something that I would like to take a look at, because I love shit that's styled like that, because it's so unique and weird. But yeah.
And also like the soundtrack is fucking phenomenal. Like, it's really good. Like, it's not just like vaporwave stuff, it is like there's some variety to it as well, and it's super cool. Broken Reality is like one of the best things I played this year that did not come out this year, again like weirdly affecting in a way that I was not expecting by the end of it.
Cool.
It's very cool. So what about yourself? I think you've got a couple of things listed on here.
I added a couple of things to this list. I didn't count Mass Effect Legendary Edition as coming out this year, because
it didn't.
it's the fucking Mass Effect games.
Yes,
but it did give me an excuse to play through all the Mass Effect games again, and that was a very like affirming experience. Like, you very rarely, when you, as a person that like likes to think about video games critically and stuff like that, once you like make your judgment about a game, you very rarely go back and actually play it again, unless you have the opportunity, because you're like moving on to the next thing or whatever. But so this gave you the opportunity to like check out Mass Effect again and be like, was I right about my stance on Mass Effect this whole time? And it turns out like the series of Mass Effect is still like one of the best video game series that's ever been made. Like, it's so well created and put together, and like the through line of the story works really well. Like, the biggest thing that came out of that is like, I think Mass Effect 3 is like, once like if you play it now with everything in it and included and everything, Mass Effect 3 is like a masterpiece. Like, it's unreal how good Mass Effect 3 is. Especially when you include like the Citadel DLC, which is just like incredible, and all the updates and stuff like that. Like, it fixes so much of that game. It's unreal. Like, Mass Effect, like, everybody should play Mass Effect. Like, it's an incredible bit of video game creation. Yeah.
And I admire the restraint that EA had with, which is not a thing I say very often, but the restraint that they had to not do something really wild for the remaster. Like, they made those games look better, I mean, like, you look at Mass Effect 1 and you're like, oh yeah, this is an old game.
It still very much looks like Mass Effect 1. It just runs better on modern computers.
Like, the only thing I was maybe hoping for was, like, more of a revamp of Mass Effect 1 where
So
it
yeah,
made it closer to 2.
That's the downside of it. The downside of it is that Mass Effect 1 is still not great.
Yeah. Like
But
watching my wife play through 1 again and being like, oh yeah, like this inventory system is still totally fucked, and
oh yeah, it's jank as fuck, but
yeah.
it does give you, it is very, very good at giving you the first entry in a sci-fi series feeling.
Oh, narratively, it's still great.
Yeah, like I forgot a lot of Mass Effect 1 and forgot that after you get off of Eden Prime or whatever the first mission is, like one of the first races that you meet, like as a person, as opposed to like Saren or whoever, is like, oh look, it's as a Turian or whatever, is like an Elcar. It's not one of like the major Citadel races. Like you don't immediately go out and meet an Asari or like a Solarian or something like that. It's like an Elcar.
Yep.
And one of the most bizarre races that you'll ever meet in that game. So they were very into the idea of just being like, look, here's the world, like go for it. And so yeah, they do a really good job of like presenting that world and like getting you involved in it in a very meaningful way.
Yes.
But yeah, the Mass Effect games are great. The other thing I added onto this list was Jedi Fallen Order, because I had been getting told for ages that I should play Jedi Fallen Order and never did. Right. Just because I never got around to it. And I did, and yeah, everyone's right, that game's amazing. Like, that game's really, really good. It's like, I didn't think that you could get a Star Wars-based Metroidvania with, like, Dark Souls-like elements to it, and have it work as well as Fallen Order does. But it really does. Like, the only problem I have with Jedi Fallen Order, other than the main character being kind of shit, is that it suffers a lot from the same problems that a lot of modern Star Wars games do, where a lightsaber doesn't feel like a lightsaber. A lightsaber feels like a baseball bat that you have to repeatedly hit someone upside the head with to get them to go down, as opposed to this thing that can like cut a person in half in one go. I guess I understand that's hard to do in a video game, because then it's just one shot hits for everything, but it is counter to what the entirety of that thing is, which it doesn't make it feel right.
It's the Superman problem, right? It's like, how do you make Superman in a video game when he's unkillable and can do anything, right? It's how do you get challenge? But yeah, when you are this all-powerful being with mind powers and an invincible sword, right? It's
a sword that can deflect lasers and chop people in half.
Exactly. Like, how do you do that? And it turns out you make everything vibro, and it reflects.
But it's not even you make everything. It's not even that you make everything vibro, because like fucking stormtroopers take 3 hits to go down. Like, it's like everything is resistant to lightsabers somehow. I don't know. Like the higher tier enemies, like the Inquisitors and like the Death Troopers and stuff like that. Yeah, I can understand them being resistant to lightsabers because they like have training and they have special armor and stuff like that. But a general fucking stormtrooper or like a spider that you fight on one of the islands is not resistant to a lightsaber in any way. It has to be, because otherwise the game breaks. Yeah. So
like, you would need to make a Star Wars game that is like almost 100% combat to get enough detail to make that. Like, you kind of would have to do the thing that a lot of people thought Jedi Order was going to be, Fallen Order was going to be, which was Star Wars Dark Souls, right? Where like, if you get hit with 2 things, you're dead. Like, or it's all about stances and positioning and all that kind of stuff.
I was going to say what I actually want is like a Star Wars game that works kind of like For Honor does, where it's like
I thought you were going to say Chivalry. Sorry, as this idea.
Actually, that would be funny as well.
Yeah, like just what's the Jedi scream button where you just go.
Yeah, that would be great. No, I mean like a super intense like one-on-one fighter with like stances and stuff, or like Absolver or something like that.
Sure.
Like intense one-on-one thing that's all about like stances and deflection and stuff like that. Because then it makes sense that the lightsaber fucking kills you if it hits you, because you're just not blocking in the right way. It would be super punishing, but I think people would like that. But yeah. Fallen Order, it's really well voice acted. The story is kind of like whatever, because it's a Star Wars story. They're all kind of whatever, but it is a really, really good, fun game, and it's like better than you'd expect it to be. Like that's kind of what Jedi Fallen Order is.
Definitely. So do you want to talk about our top fives?
Yeah, sure. I assume there'll be some like overlap that'll lead to like
I assume so.
Discussion.
So like I physically could not order mine because my top 5 is like a bunch of 2s and 3s. Like there's no standout. Like this is definitely the best thing I played this year. So it's generally
I definitely had to.
Yeah, I imagined you would.
Yeah.
So I'll do a couple of mine and then we'll do a couple of yours and we'll see how it goes. So the ones that are probably not going to overlap anyway, I assume. Life is Strange: True Colors is definitely one of the best things I played this year. So like the third official Life is Strange game.
Unsurprising.
Yeah, totally. I mean, like, yes, everyone would have guessed, but well, yeah, I think it probably is pretty unsurprising that Life is Strange game
Yud loves his sad teen game.
Yes, this is 2021 is the year where we decided that sad teen is a genre, not a descriptor.
It's not even a genre. It's a genre just for you.
Yeah,
like that
true.
It's just you specifically.
Yes, sad
really like games where you're a sad teen.
It doesn't matter if there are no sad teens in this.
Teen problems.
There are no sad teens in this game. They're all no longer teens. Doesn't matter. They're still all sad teens.
Yeah, they're all sad teens. Like, come on, like it's more about mentality than it is the fact that they're 17 or whatever.
Totally. So yeah, this time around, like there was a couple of things to be slightly aware about. Like this is the first mainline Life is Strange that Deck 9 were handling. It's not Don't Nod, who had done Before the Storm, but like this was their first big one. It was the first one that came out as a like all episodes in one go. It was a full 60 quid.
I forgot you could binge it.
Yeah, it was a full 60 quid as well as a full price game, which is the first time they've done that. And yeah, and it was and it was like again new characters, new story, all this kind of stuff. But it's just really spectacular. Like some of the stuff that they do in there is very cool. Like there's a lot of gentle derision of the magical power of empathy, whatever the thing they kept saying in that trailer about what Alex can do. But yeah, like it's a really good story. It's very contained. It's not like it's not about like some kind of world-changing event. It is very much about this small town and about Alex's and her relationship with her brother, and like it's a very contained story that I really appreciated. As somebody who, I think I said this in the podcast, but as somebody who like can see myself living in a big city for most of my life, this is the first place in a long time I've like out in the middle of nowhere town that I've ever wanted to just go live in. Like that place is so
the mountain town.
The mountain town, yeah. It's just so well realized, and it just looks so good. You're just like, I mean, like the game looks also incredible. Like this is like the Life is Strange games before have had like visual issues that like have kind of made the game worse in ways, especially the first one. Second one, they kind of fixed large chunks of it, but this is like, no, this is actually like a staggering looking game. Like there are, not only do the characters like are all the voice acting's great, all the lip syncing's great, all the motion capture and stuff is really good, but just like the environment itself just looks so spectacular. And like they've really focused on even like the non-real world parts. Makes it sound like there's some big twist, but like there's a bunch of scenes of like flashbacks of like Alex's time in the foster system, where like it's kind of done like a theater set where there's like very specific spotlights, and like it just, every part of it just creatively looks really spectacular. And yeah, it's just a solid Life is Strange game.
You've got a thing. We're not going to do this as like a category or whatever. You've got a thing written down that's where is it here? The council meeting. Is that a thing that you can talk about like quickly as like an example?
Kind of, yeah. It's also we probably didn't say at the start, but like a lot of the games we're going to talk about, we are just going to talk about spoilers. I will do my best to put bookmarks on the YouTube version of this and on the podcast notes, but like, be warned, we are just going to talk spoilers throughout all of this.
Yeah, very openly.
Yeah, so the council meeting is like the kind of the crescendo of most of the story, where like you've been betrayed basically by somebody who has been looking after you, and you're in this new life that you start to set up. And it was one of these moments where like I really they took, so like it's like this like lush, like beautiful town, and like all of the work they've put into making all that, they take all of that away and just focus on this one moment between these two people, which is like, it's basically exclusively done in like close up with like dark, like completely blacked out backgrounds, and it's all just like motion captured faces and voice acting.
Right.
And there's just this moment where like Alex just rips into this guy, and it's heartbreaking to watch. And you just like, and it's very rare as well where they do this thing where like it's just really weird to see a grown man cry in a video game. Like, it doesn't and it sounds like such a dumb thing, but it's like, it's so affecting to watch this kind of like, I'll avoid the big spoilers, but like this person who like is like big cohesive part of this town, right? Very well respected guy, just fucking crumble because you know things about his past that nobody else in the room knows. And it's watching this internal thing of like, you can like utterly destroy this, like break this dude completely because of what you know, but it lets you either like avoid all of that and just be very general, or like take very specific points that only he will get to like get your message across. And it's just this fantastic scene of like just a complete heartbreak on like everyone involved. And it's a really good way as well of like taking the Life is Strange mechanic of like, X will remember this, where like basically you come to this council with like, here's a thing that happened and it's fucked and we need to solve this like right now. And depending on how you've interacted with other members of the town, they will stand with you or stand against you, and it's a vote, right? It's a council meeting. And it really does this thing where like, well, you really helped this person out doing X, Y, and Z, so they're on your side, or you didn't, or you missed this part of it, or didn't talk to this person, or didn't do the right thing with them, so they're against you. And it does the really good like bringing together of all of the conversations that have happened all over there into this really emotional scene near the end of that game. And it's just really good. It's a really good solid moment in that game. But yeah, like it's more Life is Strange, but it's like, it's probably the best one they've done, I think. And it's very like, you don't need any previous experience. There's some stuff in there, like if you played one, like obviously one of the main characters in there is from the first game, but like you don't need that experience to have
you don't need the background.
No, not at all. And it's just it's a really, really good one of them. Like, it's the one that I now tell people, like, hey, if you're interested, if this sounds all right, like, start with this one, because it's the closest thing. And then the extra DLC that they put out, the little 3-part.
I didn't even realize they put out DLC for it.
Well, it's not even really DLC. It was announced as part of the like not even special edition. Like, it's an optional, like, I think it was like £4 extra thing, but it goes into more detail in oh god, I've forgotten her name. It's called Wavelengths. It's Steph, yes, the character from the first game. It goes into like her first days in the town as well. And it's really smart use of reuse of assets in a really smart way, and it's a really compelling story as well. And like, start to see her initial days, and yeah, it's very good. And you get it. It's like, you either buy it for like, I think it's like a $5, or you get it if you get the special edition, which again is probably on sale now. It's worth picking up, especially if you played the first game. It's good for that. So yeah, there was that, and then another one that there's probably not a lot of crossover, and I don't need to talk too much about because I've talked about it a lot. But like, Gtfo can officially go on my list this year because that game came out.
Yeah.
That game came out this year. It came out in November. Or was it the start of December? I can't remember. But anyway, like came out
Came out
early
very
access.
recently, yeah.
Yeah, along with the sixth rundown. I've talked a lot about this game, so I don't need to go too much into it. But like,
No.
it is just a spectacular co-op experience. Like it's like the difficulty seems tangible. It's not just like punishing. It is like it continually feels like we can do this. We just need to be better on execution and stuff like that.
It's the right side of unfair, where it's like it's like I can totally understand this being on the list because the game is like no game has stressed me out like Gtfo has.
Yeah. So
like the only thing that stressed me out at that level is like doing like high-end raid stuff in like MMO is like that at that level of stress, and it stresses you out not only because the game is like super creepy and atmospheric and stuff like that, but it is like they give you so little and expect you to do so much that the journey of getting there is the thing that's really interesting, and it's all about like how you enact that. That's the good thing about that.
It's a connected series of raids, basically. Like,
and
most of these games most of these levels have their own mechanics or quirks or whatever it is. And like this rundown 6 is like, it is easily the best thing they've ever done. Like they out the gate. It'd be interesting to see people coming in now, and they have done some stuff where like I've talked about the structure of this game, but it's like there are like every rundown is a unique set of levels that once they go away permanently, and they're structured as like A, B, C, D, and then a bunch of levels per layer, which are connected, and you need to do some stuff to unlock later ones. But like A1 in this rundown is like a superb introduction to what this game is, but is wild enough that people who've been playing it for 80 hours like I have are still like, what the fuck is... So they do some... Yeah, I kind of don't want to spoil it because it's such a great moment, but like they do some shit in that first level where you're like, what the fuck is happening? Even if you're new, or even if you played it for as long as we have.
Yeah, the fact that they're able to still do that to people.
They've gone buck wild with this thing, and like they've done a lot of structural things as well to take a lot of the stuff that they've learned over early access and bring it into the main game. Where like there's cosmetics and stuff now, right? So it's not the same for characters. So you unlock cosmetics as you go through stuff, so you can customize your character, which is a thing that people have been asking for. The the objective tracking is now much better than it used to be before, where you'd get your initial objective to be like, hey, get to area whatever, and especially in A1 they will take you through each step through the objective indicators. So it'd be like, okay, you'll get to the door that will get you into the next area, and it'll have a key card, and the objective will say like, you need to find this key, and then you'll go to a terminal to find the key, and it'll be like, cool, you found the key, it's in this area, and all of this is tracked properly in the objective thing. Whereas before it was here's your main objective, fucking write it all down. Like I have notebooks of notes from previous rundowns of like, okay, we need to write down these numbers and do all that. Like they track it, at least at the start anyway, properly, as a really good introduction, and like very step by step, like here's how this game works. Yeah, and then there's the story, inverted commas. Like, it's maybe the one thing that I'm not fully bought into yet is, like, the storytelling in that game. Like, currently it is still, like, it is text logs and audio, but, like, if you're in a game with co-op with people, it's very difficult to...
I was going to say, it's kind of the way you tell that story in that sort of environment.
And, like when
it's a harder way to do it.
Like, obviously this stuff has all been archived in wikis and stuff like that, and like once you go back and read what's actually happening, like there's some cool stuff happening in there. You just don't get it in the levels. But yeah, the one section, Christ. So the section we're kind of stuck on right now in our run through, it just kind of coalesces a bunch of really cool stuff this game does, right? Where you open a big security door, and also like the level design this time around is just incredible. So you open this big security door to get into the area you're being told to get to, and it's like a giant open room with a big hole in the middle, and you go down, and it's like there's like a seat, like 4 levels of like like science lab right down to the floor.
Yeah.
And it's
science lab.
Science
General
labs.
Science lab.
Yeah, well, because they're very unclear about what science they're doing there.
Yeah.
But, like, they're doing science stuff. But they do a lot of stuff with, like, plants and things like that. So there's greenery and all this kind of stuff as you go down. But it's, like, 4 levels of, like, a spiral kind of thing to get down to the base, to get to the terminal where you need to do the thing you need to do. And the first time you play through that, you're like, okay, as people who have put like 80 hours into that game, you look at it and you go, okay, so we're going to activate this thing and it's going to set off an alarm and there's going to be fucking creatures everywhere. So before we hit this button, we're going to go do our setup. We're going to plant turrets. We're going to put mines at the entry points.
What you do in that game. Yeah.
We're going to all reload. We're going to load ourselves up. And we get down to the bottom. And we get into the terminal and hit the button on the thing. And it does, like, one of the main mechanics of there is, like, areas in the floor where the team has to stay together to, like, wait out a timer. It's kind of how the alarm system works. So we're standing there and it's like, this is probably going to be an area thing. And we head it off and the area thing appears. And like, cool, right, we just need to wait this out. And then once we wait this out, we just sprint back up to the top. Hopefully all the creatures, like, will hit our turrets and mines and it'll be fine. And we're standing there waiting and then the timer stops for us waiting in the circle. I'm like, wait, what the fuck happened? The circle moves now, and the circle goes from the very base of the spiral slowly all the way up, back up to the main door, and it is this concise, like, really, it's just this series of like, oh fuck, oh no, shit, and it slowly moves up this spiral, and like stuff is just hurling down these staircases at you. There's like new enemies in there that you're like, oh shit, what the fuck is that? And it's this fantastic moment of just complete sheer panic, and it's great. And we've done it now, like we've attempted it like 4 or 5 times now. We haven't quite figured it out, but it's just like those surprising moments where it's like, we're just going to throw stuff at you and you're not going to expect it, and it's great.
Yeah, of course, that's the whole point of that game, is just like, we're just going to do this and then you have to deal with it.
Yeah, and I'd say a really great crystallization of them learning a lot of stuff from early access was, so one of the enemies in there, so they have like large versions of the standard enemies in there that do various things, which take like a lot of bullets to put down, or like if you're really creative with melee, you can like surprise them. So the standard progression that we've been doing anyway, which is probably incorrect, but fuck it, is like, we will isolate one of the big guys and then all melee them at the same time, and usually that's enough to take them down. There's an area in that gate in this rundown where it's like, there are 7 of them in this room. Like, you're not like they're
the 7 of the big guys, right? Okay.
Yeah, which is a signal. Like, even if you've played the game for a long time, it's like, you can't kill these guys. Like, you do not have enough ammo to deal with this stuff. And also, if you kill one of them, it's going to set them all off. So they force you to do the stealth mechanic in that game. Stealth mechanic, it's just stealth or be stealthy. And there's this series of stuff which, like,
don't be a fucking idiot. And
do not be a fucking idiot.
Normally.
We need to get through this. So there's a whole section where you open this door and there's like, you see how many of them are in this room, and you're like, okay, we need to stealth our way through this. And you stealth your way through it. And it's fucking nail-biting and tense and all this kind of stuff, and you work your way through it, and you get open the next room, and then the next room has scouts, which are these creatures that don't react to light or sound in the same way that the other creatures do, but they will stop, and all of these tentacles will come out their head, and if you
those things, yeah.
If you touch one of those tentacles, it sets off, they scream and call on a horde, basically, and you're not fucked, but like, it will hurt bad. So you open this second room and there's 5 of them just wandering this room, and it's like a room with like a bunch of columns and stuff like that in there, so you can't hide behind the columns and not get hit by the tentacles, but like, there's 5 of them, right? So they're constantly like retracting and extending tentacles. They're wandering constantly all over this room, and then you get through that, and then that's the objective, and then you need to go back through both rooms to get out again. And swear to God, the first time we pulled it off, we all had to just stop and like take a breather. Like, it was the most consistent, like, constant bit of tension that game's ever done, and it's just so good. It's there's no game that I have ever played that does that.
It's very similar to like how you would describe a raid.
Yes.
Like at the end of it, like it's just like if you pull off mechanics in the right way or something like that. It's different in raids because like if you pull off mechanics correctly, you don't get a chance to take a breath because you have to keep the fight going.
Yeah.
But it's still you get this satisfactory thing of like, yes, I like actually nailed that, and it felt really good.
But like, yeah, imagine a raid with like, ambience basically, and this is like oppressive, like you are just fucked all of the time, feeling. It's just, yeah, it's really spectacular. And again, the rundown system in that is actually like, it's a bold thing, right? That game is now out.
Oh, it is. Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, we're giving you 8 levels, and you'll have these 8 levels for 4 months, 3 months, and then we're going to put out new 8 levels. And it works a lot, specifically for this, because it means they don't have to keep fucking bug fixing all the old stuff as they progress.
There's new stuff that's coming in.
Yeah, and it means they can focus on just making 8 great levels without having to worry about all the old stuff.
It like focuses their development as well, because
Totally.
they know they have like a set number of things they need to make, so they can make it to the best of their ability. It's really clever.
It's really smart. But yeah, Gtfo is just spectacular. Like it's
great. It's a great game.
It's really, really good. So do you want to do a couple of yours? What your ones that I would not have?
So I've got 3 on this list that you would not have dealt with, so I'll deal with a couple of them.
Give us a couple,
because one of them is going to take way longer to talk about.
Sure.
So Monster Hunter Rise is on my list.
Right.
It's not surprising to say that like I really enjoyed a Monster Hunter game, because I really do like Monster Hunter now ever since I've played World. But like the thing that Rise does that is better than World, I think anyway, the debate is still up whether or not World is better than Rise, is that by including the wire bug, which is the new mechanic in that game where it's just like a grappling hook that like anybody can use.
Yes.
So you can use it to like whip around or jump up really high, or you can do special attacks to the monsters. That means they like tie down and then you can ride them and stuff like that. It means that every weapon and every person playing the game has maneuverability, which is the thing that kills Monster Hunter for a lot of people.
Right.
Because when people get into Monster Hunter, it's like they see Monster Hunter and they know what Monster Hunter is. So it's like, oh, it's the game where you kill the dinosaurs, right? And you go, yeah. So they want to kill the dinosaurs, and then when they get in the game and they pick the weapon and they're like, well, I want to use the big sword. And you're like, okay, you can use the big sword because that's what Monster Hunter is. Monster Hunter is all about the fucking look at the size of the sword and like this huge hammer or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then people try and use the big sword and realize it's all about, you need to know the pattern of the monster enough to know when you can do your attacks, because they have really long animation cycles, and like you need to know exactly when you can do stuff with the big sword because you don't have time to react once you're like locked in.
Mm-hmm.
But with the wire bug and stuff like that, it means that they're not the slowest person at all times. They can still whip around the map really fast, and there is a certain degree of cancelling that you can do with the wire bug that means that if you commit and it's wrong, you can sort of like wire bug out of it. So it's more forgiving, and it makes the game faster, which was kind of always Monster Hunter's problem, was that it was really slow when you got into certain points.
Yeah, like Monster Hunter is essentially about you piloting these human tanks, right? It's like
pretty much. Well, if you use those sort of weapons, then yeah.
Yes, true. Yes.
If you use anything that's not one of like 4 weapons, then yes, it's about these like hulking great things with massive weapons that are used to take down these monsters.
Yeah.
But the wire bug and the fact that you can get on your mount at any moment, the fact that you're not having to like capture monsters to ride them around anymore, like it's just there at a button press, means that the moment-to-moment gameplay is a lot snappier. Like you're getting in and out of fights a lot quicker, because like the old Monster Hunter thing where you would do a bunch of damage to the monster and it would fly away to another zone and you'd have to like run to the other zone, is now expedited by the fact that you just call your dog and jump on the dog and the dog takes you to that place, and it takes way less time.
Is Monster Hunter the game where you can drift your dog? Was that a thing?
You can drift your dog, yeah. You can drift your dog for a speed boost, yeah.
Yes.
But you can jump on the dog and it can like autopilot you to the next area, but if you manually control it and do Mario Kart style drifts around corners, you get the speed boost from the dog. But yeah, it is just what happens if you took the really solid Monster Hunter combat mechanics and expedited them to the point where it's not like a horrible slog to play, where you're just like, oh god, I have to run to the other side of the map now because this thing flew away. It's really, really good, and like all the changes and stuff they made to a lot of the weapons are really cool. They gave them a bunch of like new mechanics and stuff. All really, really interesting. It made me pick up some weapons that I'd never tried before. I still can't use the heavy weapons. Like, it just is not how I play that game.
Sure.
Like, I prefer to play Monster Hunter reactionary as opposed to like, I'm gonna fucking
planning
stand
animations.
here. Yeah, I'm gonna stand exactly here because I know the monster is gonna do this, and by the time it does this, I'm gonna bat it in the head with my big sword and deal like 1,000 damage. I prefer to be like, okay, I'm in this. Oh shit, he's doing this. I need to do this to react to it. It's a lot more better in the moment to moment for me. But there are people out there that are really good at those heavy weapons and are really impressive. But
I do really like the clips of people playing that game who do like some of the emotes that do that, like that actually do attacks.
Yeah.
They'll do it in the middle of a fight, and like just as the emote attacks, it's like the final blow on a creature, and you're just like, it's the most like.
So there's the game. A lot of the hidden stuff in that game, there's like stun damage that you can do to the enemies that will like knock them out, as opposed to like carving stuff off.
Yeah.
And one of the animations, which is like the sumo one, where they do the sumo stance and then do a bunch of like the 1,000 hand slap, like Honda does.
Yes, I've seen that.
That does like 1 stun damage per hit, but it hits a lot, and stun is like multiplicative, so the more you do it in succession, the better it gets.
Yeah.
So you can like, if somebody knocks the monster down but not out, you see people like do the sumo thing and then 1,000 hand slap at their head to try and get them to knock it out.
Yes.
It's really, really funny. But yeah, it is cool. A bunch of the new monsters they added are really cool and interesting as well. Like, fuck Magnum Aloe, because that thing is ridiculous. It's just like a big tiger thing that also has like special explosive gas that it emits. So it runs really, really fast and then lets out a bunch of this gas and then roars and it all explodes all at once. So it's really, it's annoying as hell to fight, but it is really interesting. There's a bunch of stuff like the pseudocath and stuff like that like knocks you to sleep a whole bunch, and some annoying ones. My favorite one is the Bishtan or Bashtan. It's like a monkey bat that has a hand on its tail that it uses to pick fruit from the trees and throw it at you. But different fruit has like different effects, so it can throw like red or purple or green fruit at you,
right?
And it can do damage, or it can like knock you to sleep, or it like accidentally throws like healing fruit. It's a really dumb monster, but it is really fun to fight, especially because you can like carve its tail off. So you carve the hand off of its tail, and then when it goes to do those moves, it just looks really sad and confused because it's like, oh, I can't do this anymore because my hand's not there.
Nice.
It's really good. Like the animations and stuff on all the monsters are great. Yeah, the Monster Hunter Rise is amazing. Like if you're the PC version is going to come out in January. And
holy shit! Is the PC version of that game not out yet?
No. It's the same problem they had with World, where they released it and then they said, we'll do the PC version later, and then
Jesus,
that's it. So yeah, the PC version comes out in January. If you're interested, it's definitely the best one to pick up if you think about playing Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
If you're like interested, because it is the fastest and the easiest to use. The wire bug takes a bit of getting used to, but once you get used to it, you are like fucking flying through those maps.
Sure.
And it is really, really good, and it's a really good feeling. Yeah, Monster Hunter Rise, great game.
Excellent. Let's take a 5-minute break, and we'll be back in a second. And we're back. So, do you want to give us another one of your top games of the year?
Yeah. So, this one you played a bit of, but it's definitely something that I played more of, is Death's Door.
Yes.
Death's Door is a game that I didn't expect to like as much as I did, because it came out and there was a bunch of buzz around it being like, oh, it's this cool sort of like Zelda Metroidvania game. And I was like, I like Metroidvania games, I'll give it a shot. It wasn't that expensive and it looked cool. It's got like a unique sort of style. I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And what I got out of that game was not what I expected to get out, which was a game with very, very solid mechanics. Like the combat and stuff and the dodging and stuff is all great, but the game, what I got more out of that was a game that has a lot of really charming writing and a lot of character and heart to it that I didn't expect, even from like the very first like thing that you get in that game when you return to the Reaper Sanctuary, is like entirely not what you expect when the game tells you like, oh yeah, you're a Reaper, you're out there to get souls and stuff like that, and you go back to the Reaper Sanctuary and it's like an office with like desks and like receptionists and stuff like that. Very like a unique idea, and everybody's in like business suits and stuff like that. It's really cool.
One
and,
of my favorite things is fictional red tape, fictional bureaucracy. Yes, like that kind of shit. I find really funny, and like, seeing that bit of it was really good.
You get to the Reaper Sanctuary and there are people talking about how like, oh, you lost your soul, God, that's so much paperwork, and like all that stuff.
Exactly.
It's really cool, and like all the people in the Reaper Sanctuary that you talk to all have like really unique personality, and all the dialogue's really snappy, and you're like, it's like genuinely like funny and really charming, and it's like, this isn't what I thought this game was at all. Yeah. Like I thought this was going to be like a Dark Souls thing. And the more you play it, the more you find that is more of that. Like, yeah, like I said, like the mechanics and stuff like that are really good. Like the dodging feels really good. It's got really good like invulnerability on it, so the game never really feels unfair. Like it's all mechanically sound, and like you can pull stuff off very well. The idea of the Zelda Metroid bit of it being tied to your abilities, so like the more you progress, the more abilities you unlock to let you go to different areas of the game, is really cool, and it's all tied to like your mana and stuff like that. It's very tight and cohesive and simple. Like it's all really easy to understand.
Yes,
there's not a lot of like, you're not jumping into inventories to like pull out one of like 8 items that you found over the course of your adventure. There's like 4 things and you can swap to them with your D-pad and that's it. And there's like 4 weapons that all have like unique properties that mean you can vary how you do combat and stuff like that. But the key of it is that the more that you explore that world, the more people that you find, and the more of this like amazing writing and like character work that they develop, where all the characters are really unique and funny and interesting and cool. Like the one I wrote on the list, that like special mention goes to Pothead from the first dungeon, because Pothead is like, it's a bizarre character style where you meet him at first in the garden, and it is like this like really tubby knight, but he has like a soup pot for a head.
Yes. And
talks about how like, oh, the witch of this dungeon like cursed his whole family to like be, I think he said it's like they're supposed to be like so ugly that no one will ever love them ever again, but it's not like the traditional one where it's not like Beauty and the Beast where it's just like, oh yeah, you got made into a horrible monster or whatever. They mean that their heads got turned into pots, but he's still like very jovial and quite happy and cracks jokes and like offers you the soup that's in his head and stuff like that, and plays the character of the kind of like hapless knight protagonist sort of character, but plays it completely as a joke and as a complete idiot, where you go in and do a bunch of the stuff in the dungeons, and then he turns up and it's just like, oh, look what we've done, this is great. And you're like, dude, you're just a knight with a pot for a head, what are you doing? And he like follows you around, like you meet him in the other dungeons and stuff like that as well, being like, oh yeah, I'm just exploring, like look at all this stuff, like come and sit by the fire. He's great, Pothead's fantastic, and they introduce him in like a really dramatic, they introduce him the same way they introduce bosses, where it's like zoom in on a character and then big text letters and that like special death door font, but he's just this like bumbling idiot. He's great. I love Pothead so much. You meet other people like the bard whose instrument is like a bagpipe on a stick.
Yep.
And
I saw pictures of him.
His whole thing is like he's trying to, you meet him in like the forest camp in the second dungeon, and he like tells stories, but he wants to be able to like write his own epic story. So he decides that you, being this like crow that's going around trying to get the souls back, is like the story he should be telling. And you meet up with him in the other dungeons, and he's like written more verses of this epic saga that he's written, and they're all awful. Like, they're all really bad, but like nobody has the heart to tell him that it's bad. So you just feel like, yeah, good job, mate. Like, it's great, well done. And yeah, it's a world populated by really interesting stuff with cool. Even that you meet like the head reaper, like Death. Basically, you meet your boss at one point, and it is totally not what you expect the Grim Reaper to be. He's like 11 feet tall and in like full armor with like a really tall helmet, and like offers to sit down and have tea with you. And it's like when you like tell him that, oh yeah, like I lost a soul and I'm like, this guy stole it and I'm trying to get all these other souls back. It's like, oh no, that's fine, don't worry about it. Like, I'm sure you'll get it. It's okay. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, it's bizarre. And yeah, he's really funny. It's not something you ever say about the Grim Reaper, but he's really funny and really charming, and that's what this world does really well. It's like, it's a game that I had a lot of fun playing, and I had more fun experiencing what that game was.
I put a little bit of time.
Yeah.
I put a little bit of time into it just to know what it's about, because I knew it's not my kind of thing.
Yeah,
and
it's
like,
not going to be for you.
Yeah, and I bombed out like the first big combat encounter, and it was just like I tried it like 7 or 8 times. I was just like, this is not my kind of thing. But on the run up to that, like meeting the is he a gravedigger? I can't remember, or the one who just stands there and is like, hey, you should probably just hit me, and you hit him and he goes,
the Great Reaper,
and it's like, oh, it doesn't look like you'll be able to kill me. Oh well, and just ponders off again. You're just like, wait, what is happening in this world?
That whole encounter was really cool. It's really good foreshadowing as well, where he's just like, oh, you're a Reaper, you should kill me, and you hit him and he's like, oh, I guess I'm still here, okay, and then that's it.
And I like that the game doesn't do that in a cutscene. It like cuts back to you and like, oh, I actually do have to hit him. Oh no, okay, fine. It's like, oh no, I'm fine.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, I do like.
Yeah,
that.
And the game's full of like cool little interactions like that.
Yeah,
it's great. I'll give special mention to the soundtrack. Soundtrack's really good.
As I was playing through that game, I was like, this is a Kalama soundtrack, and it's really good.
But it's a thing, it kind of mirrors the game in that it goes places that you don't expect. Like, yeah, it's like, there's a lot of like folky stuff in there where it's like a lot of guitars and like panpipes and stuff like that, but it does chop and change stuff a lot, where there's like stuff where it's like a lot more drum heavy and it gets a bit electronic, and then it swaps back. It jumps between genres, but it does it really well and really subtly.
It still felt concise as like a whole.
Yeah, like, it still all works because of what you're seeing.
Totally.
Yeah, it's a fantastic soundtrack, and the like after credits stuff that you'll see, there's not really a lot to spoil, but it is like obviously the fun of the Metroidvania genre is like when you get the stuff, you go back and you find the new areas, right? It's like the whole thing. But the end game of Death's Door, after you've beat the credits and you get like the special key, and then you find what the special key does, and it turns all the maps into like nighttime. So it's like a new way of looking at the whole map, and there's new enemies and there's new things to find. It's not quite the same as like Inverted Castle as like in like Symphony of the Night, but it is this like, they've done the thing of like it's taking it and giving you the different perspective on the maps that you've been through before, that you then have a new context for all your abilities and stuff like that. It's really cool, and it's really interesting. It is, and it's just a good excuse to just play more of that game if you like playing that game. But yeah, Death's Door is absolutely fantastic. I couldn't recommend it more. Yes, it can be a bit punishing. There is combat and stuff you have to worry about, but the writing is so good, and the characters are so good, and the music's so amazing.
It's definitely one of those.
It's worth looking at.
It's definitely one of those moments where I was really annoyed that I suck at those type of games, where I was like, I want to see more of this for sure. I just can't deal with the difficulty stuff.
Yep.
So probably the last thing I've got that you didn't play is Last Stop, which is definitely one of the best things I played this year. We talked about it a little bit in the podcast, but Last Stop's the new game from the...
We did a video on it, didn't we? Well, that was Route 96, wasn't it?
Again, keep doing this all during the year.
I keep forgetting. There's like 3 Traveling America games that I forgot.
Well, Last Stop is not that, but I know what you mean. It sounds like it should be the name of that game, but no. We'll talk about Road 96 later in a different category. But Last Stop's the new game from the Virginia people, or the people who made Virginia, which I really liked. And
fucking thing.
It's a much more traditional one of these types of games where it's like it's a Telltale style game where it's like you're kind of there's some wandering about, but it's a lot about conversation and decision making and all this kind of stuff. But a couple of things that set it apart. So it's set in like modern day London, which a lot of these type of games are not. So it's a lot more, and it's the little things like one of the main characters is a high schooler, and like it's like her and her friends at like in school uniform, and it's like that's not a thing you see in these games, and it's like, oh right, because that's a thing that happens in this country that doesn't happen anywhere else. It's like the Londonness of it is very cool. And just seeing that kind of world, seeing that kind of stuff represented in games is very cool. As somebody who was in London this year, like tail end of this year, there's one of the characters lives in like a obviously like a stylish new build style thing where it's all these like small rooms, but it's like in a really like glass and metal style building. And I passed a bunch of them and was like, that is fucking spot on to that thing that from the game. So it's like it's definitely like they know London pretty well. And it's just really good, like good solid writing. It's very funny. It's dark's the wrong word. It's got the right level of like peril in it that doesn't feel contrived. Like it feels like there's a lot of like oh fuck moments in there where they pull stuff that you're really, really not expecting them to do. And it's just a really solid kind of one of those kind of narrative games. One of the main reasons it's in here as well is like I was really enjoying the whole game, and then they pull the final episode, which is fucking wild, which I do need to talk about, and this is a heavy spoiler for the end of this game, right? So the lead up to that game, so you follow kind of three main characters, right? There's the kind of the single dad and the young guy who lives across the street from him, who get body swapped early on in the game. Okay. And their story is like figuring out what the fuck happened to them. There's the high schooler who her and her friends keep watching this guy who lives on a street next to where one of them live, who just seems really shifty, and like people keep going into his house and not coming out, and they keep going like, we need to figure out what the fuck's happening here, and they follow him into like an abandoned like Victorian baths, and just see him do like weird magic shit, and then they get caught and panic, and then one of them just smacks him over the back of the head with a thing, and they tie him to a chair, and a large part of their story is like them finding out about him and who he is and all this kind of stuff. And then the third one is this woman who works for an organization which is unclear about what exactly they do. Her stuff isn't like paranormal. Her stuff is just like she's going up for a promotion for this job that she feels like she's going to get beat out by one of the younger members of the team, and also she's having an affair at the same time, and dealing with her dad. Like a lot of it is like very kind of human interaction stuff with this kind of paranormal layer on top of it. So you follow all three of these people in their own individual stories, and then they start to overlap where you're like, oh, that's who she's having an affair with, and that's how that ties into this other person and all this kind of stuff. So they all crescendo at the final episode, and also like they basically do acts, but you can play the three characters in that act in any order. So like every act they go back to like a subway car, and you pick which character you want to do first, and you can do the three of them in any order, and then it moves to the next act, then you can do the three in any order. The final episode is like, and they split them into episodes as well, but they're quite clearly going for this TV style format. The final episode is like, you don't get to choose, right? The final episode is just like, we're just going, right? And essentially what happens is like, the three of them So the guys who have body swapped, they track down the person who body swapped them. It was like, yeah, we can change you back, or we can fix this problem, but you need to go through this portal. And they find a guy in a vape shop who like is the guy that says, hey, we can go through this portal, and this dude goes through the portal, and then that's the end of his episode. That's the end of his episode, and then the high schooler eventually gets convinced by the guy to be like, okay, I'll show you what's happening. They go into his house, and he's got a portal, and they go through this portal, and that's the end of her episode. And then the person who works for this company, this weird, they're very unclear about what this company actually does, but she works for them, and she feels like kind of secret agent-esque, like she's got a gun, and you're not quite sure what's happening, but it feels like MI6-esque.
She also find a portal?
No, her episode is like, hey, and through some stuff that happened in the previous, like, the job that you were going for, you end up getting through not great means, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, sure.
So, like, you get a call, basically, from your boss, is like, hey, it's time. And you're like, oh, cool, we got to find out what the fuck this thing is that they keep talking about. And she goes into she takes this elevator down to, like, level -70 in this place, like vast, deep underground.
Good things always happen on the negative levels.
Goes into a thing, goes into like an airlock seals behind it. She puts on like this, like, you know, the old, if not old, but you know, like the modern suits that they wear for like really deep sea stuff, where it's like all solid.
Oh, the
like,
big,
like one of them,
big diving suits.
Yeah, puts on one of them, gets pushed out into this thing, and it's basically like this catwalk over this giant pit with this giant portal underneath it, and she gets dropped in to this portal, and then that's the end of her act. And then the final episode starts, and it cuts back to her, and she's just in this desert. And you're like, what the fuck happened? Like, what is going on here? And then this alien creature, well, not creature, like this humanoid alien just walks up and like doesn't like, and kind of speaks English, and you're like, what the fuck is happening here? And like, they take her to this city because she's there for a particular reason. They go to this city, and they've just, this entire game, where like the past 6 hours have been spent in like a super good representation of London, this final episode, they've just built an alien city with like unique looking aliens and all this cool assets and all of this shit. I'm just wondering through this going, there's so much happening in this last thing. They've built so much stuff that's only going to be used for the next hour. And they all just turn up, and then that's the point where the 3 characters interact, and you're like, oh, you're you, and that's how you meet into this, and that's why you're here, and all of, and it's this final episode in this alien world that ties all of this stuff together. They built all of these assets for this final episode that is not going to get used anywhere else. It's so, when you're a small studio.
The way you're describing it reminds me, I had to look this up because I knew I read it somewhere. It was the Rock Paper Shotgun review for this. They called it half a really good Doctor Who episode.
Yes.
And that sounds very accurate.
Yeah. It is like, it's like they built a Doctor Who episode for the final hour of that game. And it's like, it's the thing you don't do as a small team, right? Like, you do not build a bunch of very unique assets that you're not going to reuse.
Yeah, for one thing.
Yeah. And it's just like, it's so wild that they take this right turn into like, you're now just on an alien fucking world that does, with all these implications and stuff. And it's just so crazy. And you come out the end of it, you're just like, man, they pull it off. Like, it doesn't feel contrived. Like, it feels consistent, and it feels like part of that game. And then it comes at the other end, and you're like, it's just fucking, it's so good. It's just so good. And it was that, my wife could hear me in the other room as I was doing this, like, and it was just me continually going, fuck off, we are not, wait, what? And it's just, I was just making noises the whole time.
Yeah.
It's really, really good. And they do like a really, really good resolution to that. The story, they tie it all together. They just do some really good, like, it feels really concise and feels really consistent, and it's just a really good one of those games. Like, the dialogue's really good. Like, it's not cheesy. Like, it's genuinely funny. They have good reactions. They do the really good thing of that is kind of the death knell of a lot of these types of games, where like they can do comedic timing very well, where a lot of the dialogue that you're choosing, like, other characters will react to it very well. So there's not like like you won't say your line, there'll be a pause while it switches to the other character, and then the other character will say their line. Like, they're really snappy about it, and it really works. Like, the dialogue really works in doing that. Yeah, and there's like a really good, they add stakes to, because I've spoiled the ending, I'm not going to spoil other parts, but there's a particular moment where they're like, if this had been like a 6 p.m. like ITV drama thing, you're like, oh, they'll hint at this, but it won't pan out. Like, it's like a slight moment of tension, and then it'll be resolved fine. And then there's like, no, we're fucking doing this, and they go hard, and you're like, like the real moment that matches the character's moment of like, oh, we're fucked. Oh, this is really bad. Like, they pull you into that, the same moment, the way the character's feeling super, super well in that thing. Yeah, Last Stop is just a really good one of those type of games.
Yeah.
And is definitely like better than a lot of what Telltale tries to do with a lot of this stuff. It's like,
Sure.
Yeah, it's just really excellent. So the only other thing I've got on my list, the two other things, but I know you played a little bit of Artful Escape. I don't know how much
like 3 hours or something.
Okay,
like that.
cool. But Artful Escape is another one of the things on my list. That game is a staggering achievement. That
it's a trip.
It's a hell of a thing. Like, one of the things I really enjoy about in specific games is not understanding how they're doing things. Like, because once when you write enough software, you're like, okay, you start to see how you would put some of this stuff together, and you start to see the tricks. You play enough video games, and you're like, oh, that's that. And like, there's bits in Artful Escape where you're just like, I have no idea how the fuck they're pulling this off. I can't figure out, not only just technically, but like the creativity on every part of that game. Like, just like, is creativity the right word? Like the imagination.
Imagination and style is the
Yeah.
thing. Like, it's oozing with style and like artistic coherence, despite being very, I was gonna say very disparate. Like, the places that you're going are very different.
Yeah.
They feel cohesive in this fucking weird ass trip world that they've built for Francis.
Yes.
That, yeah, it's bizarre. That game is so bizarre.
And they do like, and it's super funny. It's kind of, they do tell a story over it.
Yeah, it was not something that I actually, from the stuff that I'd seen from the outside, I didn't expect there to be as much dialogue as there was.
Yeah,
there's a lot of
it's all dialogue,
people talking. Yeah,
but and again, like they do the dialogue stuff, like they do it well. Like the timing on it's good. Like it's well acted. All this kind of stuff.
I mean, they've got big names in that game. Like,
yeah, totally.
They got like Lena Headey and not LeVar Burton. The other one. Is it LeVar Burton?
No, it's not. I can't remember the name of the dudes, but yes.
You got that and like Mark Strong and like,
yeah, they got some names in there.
A bunch of like really really famous art for.
And they use it well. Like it's not just like
they
don't just put them in there for name recognition. Like they actually use them, and they do some cool stuff with them.
Carl Weathers, that's the one.
Carl Weathers, that's
like,
the name.
Yeah, and does an amazing job playing Lightman and like stuff like that. Like Jason Schwartzman is like Zom, and he's great as well.
Yeah,
and, yeah.
But yeah, it's such a, like, it's not. It really is kind of like, it is more of a walking simulator than a game. Like, I have to keep telling people like who are interested in it, like it's not even really a platformer. It's like a cool experience thing.
You
with
spend
dialogue.
a lot of that game literally just holding right, and then you press A every so often. Like, it's not.
Well, or if you're playing it properly,
and then there's Simon Says, like.
And also if you're playing it right, you're also holding down the guitar button the whole time.
See this, because you talked about this and you were like, "Oh man, it's great. You could just hold a button down and shred the entire time," and that is good. I'll give them that, having a button that you could hold down to just shred or whatever. It doesn't always work. It's not having. It works, and the like when you're going through the what's it called, the bit in between realities where it's like, it looks, that bit works really well there, where all you're doing is fucking like rainbow roading and like whatever. But like there's bits where there's like really quiet moments and like really delicate moments that you can also just sit and shred over, and it doesn't work. It's really weird to sit and do that.
So that
it does feel like you're doing it wrong if you don't do that.
So that is the feeling that I got as well, where it's like, yes, that the initial couple of stages where you're just like, I just hold this button and this dude can shred and stuff happens in the world and it's awesome. But yeah, definitely there are moments later on where you're like, oh, I should not.
Yeah, you should not be shredding.
I should not be shredding here. And like the fact
that being said, the bit in the second world where it's like the fashion place where it's like you're gonna look really weird. Shredding your entire way through that makes sense because you're basically like starting a revolution, quote
exactly
unquote.
Yes,
but yeah, there are places where it's like, yeah, you should hold the button down and just hold right and do it. But yeah,
but yeah, it's just a spectacular thing that they've put together.
It looks great. It does look great. It is a very striking thing. But that's that's what that game is supposed to be about. Totally. It's about artistic discovery. So it's,
lots of little touches in there that I really appreciate. Like the overall story of that thing is like somebody finding their own musical voice. Basically, is the most concise way of describing that story. But like along the way, they do the thing
under the weight of like expectation.
Yes, that's a big part of it as well. But like the fact that like you get to like design your outfit like halfway through that game is a real decision where you're like, okay, like now that you've
and they're all ridiculous.
They're all amazing. They're just all so good. And like the fact that you can choose your persona name or your artist name, and like they've recorded you choose like something from a list, and then you can type in the second part of it,
whatever you want.
So like I think I was like what was I Lightway McGruff or whatever the fuck I was called, I can't remember. But like the fact that your character or all the characters will say the first part and then the second part will just be like radio static. It's just such a good way of solving that problem.
It's not radio static. It's a lick. Like they do like a.
Oh, sorry. You're right. It's a guitar lick. It's a guitar lick that they do for it, and it just works so well. And there's oh god, that game oozes so much style and really pays off with it as well. It's so
it does it in a really good way.
Yeah,
it's a game to just like sit and experience. Like,
totally. It's on Game Pass as well. Like it's worth just sitting down. You'll know very quickly if you're into it. Also, we've got a video on it as well if you want to see the start of that game. God, Artful Escape is just such a bizarre fucking thing. And it's
weird. I'm glad shit like that gets made.
Oh yeah, totally.
It's like so strange. Yeah,
I mean, it's like the most Annapurna game that I think.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like nobody can make that other than like someone that gets published by Annapurna. Like
you mean the studio Beethoven and Dinosaur, which is also a great name for a.
That is great name. Yeah, fantastic.
Great logo.
Name.
Yeah. So yeah, did you play Resident Evil or did you just watch it?
I watched all of it and played some of it, but I get it. Like I understand the
So like Resident Evil is the last one I've got on my list, which was Resident Evil Village, which just partially because it was a game I could play as opposed to RE7, which was just like seven. Yeah, 7.
Yeah, 7's Biohazard, 8's Village.
Yeah, 7 was just the game that I took one look at and went fuck no and just could not interact with that game at all.
It's so good though.
Oh, yeah, I've watched the whole thing be played and it's excellent, but just I can't do that myself. But Village was the first game. I'm glad they took all the stuff from 7 and was like, okay, how about we make it like they just turned up all the campness of that thing like to 11.
They did again. I think I did this on the podcast, but I will say again, people should really go and watch that 7.5 hour video essay from Noah Caldwell-Gervais about Resident Evil.
Yep.
Because 7 to 8 does exactly what the rest of the entire Resident Evil thing does, where it goes from 7, which was like survival horror, serious escape. Well, not serious because that game does get mental towards the end, but then like super serious, scary thing to then. Towards the end of 7 into 8, really campy and strange and dumb, still scary, but dumb. And that is the entirety of Resident Evil over the course of the years has hit that level of strangeness, and yet 8 kind of just encapsulates it in a
I mean the
it's also okay to just say that you can play 8 because you wanted to see the big lady, like that's fine.
I mean
okay.
Big Lady Big, right? Like let's
she
not
big.
let's not fuck
big.
around, right? That she is
that was a bizarre thing of this year.
Ooh.
How much the internet grabbed onto Lady Dimitrescu
and how much Capcom felt. No, it's not Cap. Is it Cap? It is Capcom. How much Capcom like doubled down on it as well? Like it'd be a very easy thing for them to just ignore that part of the internet and just be like,
no, that's like we're so glad that people.
Yeah, like here's actually how big the big lady is, and you're like, okay,
here's
cool.
her height in heels because you need to know it because she always wears heels.
Exactly. And yeah, just like the moment, like, like I mean, to be fair, like the oh god, what's the name of the house? But the dollhouse section of that game, like that's the close.
Not Moreau. The other one, I can't remember.
Whoever it is, like
singing.
I cannot remember the surname, but yeah, the dollhouse part of that game, like that was like that was terrifying. Like that is a really scary.
Genuinely, that thing goes from like a really cool escape room to holy fuck, wasn't Silent Hill scary? Like it is like
it's the closest. It's
really,
the closest that
really
series,
scary moment. Yeah,
it's the closest that series has got to a Silent Hill game in a long time, and it's just
obviously we're talking about the big baby, but like that's that thing is fucking scary.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. Like I managed to get through it at a point where people weren't actively talking about it, because like it'd be very easy to see that game and be like, oh, okay, that's the thing. But like even as the idea of like, yo, this is the bit that fucks with people, like actually seeing it happen is just
it's the fact that it does the same thing that it does with Alien. Like Alien does this really well, where you spend a lot of that thing hearing it and not seeing it, and then even when you get into the bit where you're interacting with the big baby, you hear it first before you see it, because you hear it do its cries and like scream for mama or whatever, and then round the corner and you finally fucking see it. It is this really effective like hit of the horror, like holy shit, we finally see the monster. And it also like, it's great. That whole bit's fantastic.
Even narratively, that whole section where they're like, okay, like you need to go down into this like further basement where there's this giant well that you're going to climb down, and the whole time you're like, this is like every horror movie trope ever. We're going to make you do all of them and not pull the trigger on it until the very, very, very last moment, and then you're like, oh fuck you. And then as you're running away, going into other rooms that you may not have been in, that you don't have to go into, and being like, oh shit, there's like, it tells more of the story as you're running away from this terrifying fucking creature. And yeah, it's a hell of a moment. But just like that whole game is just a series of fantastic, like I have not belly laughed as hard as when Dimitrescu cuts your hand off. Like that moment was just like, that was the moment where you're like, oh, they know how ridiculous this thing is.
It was legitimately one of the funniest things I've ever had, because like I had seen it all before you started playing it. And I could tell you'd gotten to that moment because you messaged me and were like, did they ever explain how Ethan is able to like get his hand cut off and then just sprinkle stuff on it and it be fine? And I was just like, oh yeah, it's just the liquid, like it's fine, like don't think about it too much. Well, knowing that at the very end they're like, oh yeah, they totally justify everything.
Like that's the other part of this that really blew me away, was the fact that like, because I was watching the Nextlander guys play through 6 again recently. 7 again. Having played through Village and be like, oh yeah, they don't talk about any of that in that original game. Like they just
They just do it and they say, oh yeah, it's like the special liquid or whatever.
Yeah, the special
they're saving
liquid.
it for the big story reveal at the end of 8.
Exactly, like that game, and like I would love for somebody to actually, like in years and years time, to actually go like, did you guys know? Like, was this part of the plan, or was this just like we need to talk about this thing? Because like the idea that Village would call back to that game at all is like, to the extent that it does, to be like, no, we actually do need to. We need to.
It's like a direct sequel, to be fair. Like,
kind of, yes, but like, it felt like at the start of that game they were like, okay, that game was like set up for these characters, like original trauma, and like just the series of reveals they do in Village about like how much of Seven actually matters in this thing, and also
the fact that like all of Seven matters and both doesn't matter at the same time because Ethan's been dead the whole time. Like it's so like, it's such a weird choice, and the way that they do it, where it's like you have the bizarre Eve vision again, and she just tells you, she's just like, you didn't think you like really did all that stuff, did you? Like, yeah, you got into a fist fight with Jack and he killed you. Like, that was, and then the mold took over. And
the fact that they're like, the fact that they're like, immediately after you get your hand cut off, and then you put the fucking magic liquid on, reattach your hand. At that point, I was like, oh, okay, they're not even gonna try and explain that. Like, this is just how this game works, and that's fine. And they've turned up the camp meter enough where like they can get away with just not explaining this. And then not only do they explain it, they tie it into the previous game and say, oh, by the way, this is also the start of the Umbrella Corporation. And you're just like, what? Like, I didn't expect any of that stuff in this game. I just expected this to just be this.
It's wild, the things that the game does.
And especially because it does feel like, I can't remember who it was I saw say this, but that game does feel like what I want. Yeah, that game definitely does feel like, because it's the four heads of the village, like, it does feel like they had 4 separate ideas for what to do for this game. And we're just like, fuck it, let's just put them all in. And you're like, okay, like, and it works, and it's great, and it's
super good. It's really good, and I'm fascinated to see what happens now with all this stuff that they've got set up, and the fact that like they're shifting the perspective for Rose to be the center of it. Right. Yeah. So I don't know what happens to Resident Evil in 9, where you play as a weird fucking psychic mold child.
Yeah, like, you've now got superpowers, which is not a thing you've ever really had in Resident Evil before. So like,
it's crazy. Like, I don't know how that's gonna work, but I'm fascinated to see how it does. I don't know if they make it really boring and you just go back to being like playing as Chris and then like help Rose every so often. But like, I don't know. But
yeah,
it would be really sad if they didn't make Rose the main character.
Yeah. And just some of the decisions that they made, like having, like, I am reasonably confident they didn't expect Demetrius to hit the internet as hard as she did.
No, of course not.
So the fact that she's the first one that you encountered in that game and she's just not in the rest of the game, I think is excellent. Like, it'd have been very easy for them to just go, well, I mean, it's too late probably in that process for them to really map her, like, put her in more of the game, but like, nope, she's here, she does the thing, and then she's gone, and we're gonna move on. It was a good, God, the game is just, I was just giggling at points, like I was just actively giggling.
It's great, it's the right level of like camp level dumb that is,
with some really like, and also like, probably shouldn't understate how fucking incredible that game looks. So like,
for sure.
So I played that on PS5, and I was just like, oh, they're really, like, they're saying something is photorealistic is very kind of like fucking 2005, but like, there are moments in that game where the lighting just hits right, and you're just like, that is just, you should not be able to do this on a game.
It's especially that first shot, when you do all the intro stuff and you get that first shot of the village and Castle Dimitrescu and stuff in the background, it looks amazing and is genuinely like quite haunting because there's like the fog and stuff everywhere. It's amazing. It's such a gorgeous thing.
And they also don't like the one of the big problems, especially like now, like with the new consoles and stuff like that, we've kind of jumped a level of fidelity with graphics, is that like, things like weird clipping issues become more evident because it really breaks immersion. Like, if something doesn't look great and it clips to a wall, you're like, sure, it's a video game. But like, when stuff looks that good, when you see visual issues, it really, really fucking stands out. And that game felt like one of the most solid games I played this year, where like it felt like everything had weight and everything felt real and everything was kind of very everything felt very kind of solid, I think, throughout that whole thing. There wasn't a lot of clipping and there wasn't a lot of weird graphics issues and all this kind of stuff. It's just a great achievement and really, really enjoyed it. I can't remember who it was, but whose Game of the Year stuff I was watching or listening to, but they had played through that game like 5 times, and every time it's like a different game where you're like, oh, because once you're finished the first time, you can spend some of your points to get like an infinite ammo pistol to start with. And you're like, okay, yeah, that would change how you play that game, so you do that. And then you get like the assault rifle that's unlimited ammo, and you're just like, okay, you can just fucking mow shit down. And I kind of do want to play through that game again, just see it again. But yeah, Resident Evil Village, excellent. Hi there, future editor Ewan's cutting in here. This conversation went way longer than we planned and didn't really record in a natural stopping point, so we're just going to stop here and put the rest of the conversation in a separate episode, which will come out a little bit later. So yeah, stay tuned and we'll finish this conversation off in another podcast. See you then.